What up, folks? It's Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the exce to provide you my thoughts on the Punisher series that Netflix just released. So as those of you that know these Netflix shows know, the Punisher was introduced in Daredevil Season 2, probably one of the best arcs of television that has ever been produced. And it definitely left us wanting more. It left me wanting more. I know that we did get a burst of him at the beginning of the season and then a burst at the end, but the show is called Daredevil. It's about Daredevil, so it wasn't all about the Punisher, but the introduction of Jon Bernthal as the Punisher was such a successful thing that, of course, Netflix decided to do a standalone show of just Jon Bernthal's Punisher, and I'm so glad that this all worked out the way it did, and also kind of redeemed as far as my feelings regarding Shane being killed in season 2 of Walking Dead. Spoilers for those of you that have not watched The Walking Dead, but yeah, the fact that he was killed off. He's such an intricate part of that show. And it's often interesting to kind of imagine what it would have been like if he had continued on the show and the character had survived and continued on through the governor stuff and this Negan stuff that's going on now. It would have been interesting to see that. Anyway, we didn't see it, but now we sort of get to see Shane, the Punisher, in a different light, right? Jon Bernthal in a different role. It's definitely not obviously Shane, but it's got shades of Shane, right? There's shades of Shane in there because Shane was willing to go pretty far to do what he felt was right, and so that's all obviously what the Punisher's willing to do as well, Frank Castle, and there's a lot of parallels there, but he definitely plays it differently. He's a great actor. He really gets into his roles, and you buy that he is these characters. You just buy it because he's fucking fantastic, and he does not disappoint throughout this entire series. He does not let up. Every moment is intense Punisher Frank Castle moments. And it, if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't be able to sell the show in the way that you do to the audience, to me, to all of us that have watched it. You wouldn't have been able to really pull off the authenticity that it needed in order to kind of resonate as true, right? As valid. And so he is key to this whole thing succeeding, and I'm so glad that again he's available to do it, and he is doing it, and the fact that Netflix is doing this as well. Years ago, after the Avengers success, I remember there was that announcement about Netflix is going to do Defenders, and they're going to do Daredevil, they're going to do Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, and then bring them together as one team, and the idea of it sounded so good, but I never thought it would actually happen. And here we are post that time. And back then I never imagined, the Punisher is going to not only be part of this, but ultimately spin off into his own thing that's going to be probably the best representation of Punisher we've ever seen outside of comics. I would not have believed it if somebody had told me that, but that's what happened. That's what happened with the character. He's been done right finally, and the character has been honored in the way the character deserves. I did grow up reading Marvel mainly, and he was always around. I was never a Punisher fan directly, but I always appreciated the character when he was around. Obviously, he was introduced in Spider-Man, as an assassin trying to kill Spider-Man, which is fucking awesome. And that issue, I've always wanted that issue, that yellow cover where you see the Punisher standing and you've got in a large weird perspective. It might even be a circular panel, Spidey in his sights, right? He's about to shoot him, and it's one of those fucking beautiful covers that is legendary within Marvel canon, and thus is solidifying the importance of Frank Castle in that, and the fact that now he's back with Disney, yeah, because the rights I believe were owned by some other company, as was Ghost Rider, as was Daredevil. But because films were made about these characters, the rights defaulted back to Marvel, and so now they get to do whatever they want with these characters, and they're doing such a great job here. I really hope that the Avengers films reference this world that's going on in New York as well, like somehow, like, it'd be so good if it happened. It'd be so good. It has to happen. It just has to happen. Like it's like, why not? You're just throwing it away if you don't. Like, I understand, like, maybe showing the Punisher in an Avengers film is tricky, but fuck it. And plus, I believe Jon Bernthal and the guy that's now playing Spider-Man, which I forget his name. I believe they had a screen test together. So, oh my god, could you imagine fucking seeing Jon Bernthal's Punisher in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like in a Spider-Man film, or like in any way interacting with Spider-Man? It would be so fucking everything. It would be everything, Netflix. You have to make this happen. You have to make this happen. Alright, this series, it did feel a little slow at first, but you needed that slow burn because you're building a whole fucking world here. You're building Frank Castle's world. Frank Castle is a part of Daredevil's world, Mad Murdock. And now, like, we're trying to, like, establish him in his own world, like, with his own characters, his own set of whatever circumstances that are relevant to him only. And, like, obviously we'll push him through, like, a series of interesting story arcs. And, we'll be introduced to a bunch of interesting characters, and it'll be engaging in the way that the series was. Like, you gotta take your time to kind of start positioning the pieces that will ultimately start to interact, and, like, through a very, very nicely build momentum throughout the series, kind of take us, to a climactic point and ultimately to the end of the series. I thought the story arcs for all the characters were great. I really liked all the actors. Like this Iranian girl, I don't know if she's being played by an Iranian girl, but the character's Iranian. Like, the actress was fantastic. Like, she really was just, like, authentic, and, like, you felt for her, and it was awesome. And the same thing for the guy that played, I think his name is Jigsaw, ultimately. I think that's his name. The guy, I think did John Travolta? No, John Travolta did not play him. Somebody else played him in, like, one of the Punisher movies. But anyway, the guy, like the good-looking guy that ultimately gets his face, like, all fucked up by Frank Castle, that was, he was great. He was great in the role. He was a great actor. Yeah, everybody was great. Like, the guy's found, what was super fucking great was Micro. The guy that played Micro, like, he fucking did a stellar job, man. I really bought everything. A guy like that can come off cheesy. And he didn't come off cheesy whatsoever. It was really good. They really know how to fucking cast these shows. Like, they have some really good casting directors on these shows, straight up. Like, all the supporting characters, like Micro's family, like his wife, the children, great. Like, the children did a good job too. And that's a difficult one to pull off, children. I don't know if any of you saw The Strain. Like, I watched The Strain. It was all right. But, like, the kid, I didn't really quite buy it, at first. Well, really, most of it, I didn't quite buy. And so, I think that was part of, like, why I didn't love that show. It was part of probably several reasons, but it was fine overall. Anyway, I won't talk about this trend. There might be some of you that are big fans, and I don't want to step on your toes. It was all right. It was not great, but it was all right. As is the case with 12 Monkeys, for those of you interested. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about those. Let's talk about the Punisher, man. Like, yeah, so all the characters were really interesting. I love the Karen stuff, the Karen Page, like, appearance, and, like, her persistent kind of presence within it. I like the whole thing of, like, of, like, that interplay between, like, Frank and, like, the government, and, like, are they gonna let him go? Are they going to imprison him? Like, which, like, that sort of back and forth with respect to that issue. I always like that, because it's like he's always on the verge of, like, going to prison for life and maybe worse, but he's also, like, being very heroic and on the verge of kind of being lauded for his behavior. And so it's this interesting, like, dynamic, this, like, sort of opposite end of the spectrum, like potential paths that he could walk, and really he's walking them in a parallel fashion, and it's really exciting. And the Punisher story obviously is captivating, and if it wasn't, he would not have lasted like decades, and have all this attention always kind of being placed on him, because he is like obviously a tragic anti-hero type. Like he's a tragic character. Like his loss of his family is so pivotal, and like I thought they did a really good job in the show of like really emphasizing that. There's one thing I do want to mention with respect to the Thomas Jane Punisher movie, the Punisher movie that came out two Punisher movies ago. Not the last one, which was Punisher, I think Warzone, but the one before, which was like the Punisher, and it was Thomas Jane, the actor, who's really good. He's a great actor, and he did a great job in that role. In that movie, they felt that, I think in order to sell a person snapping like that, like he didn't just lose his family, like his wife and his kids. He lost his entire extended family because they were doing a family reunion, and then everybody got killed in that. Spoilers, by the way. Everybody got killed on that in his family reunion. It was like, all right, this will like sell a person snapping and going on sort of like their own like private war against whomever. Like this will sell that, versus like, no, it's just the wife and kids. But I really bought the wife and kids thing here in the Netflix series. I really bought Bernthal just being driven by it and just having like a relentless sort of like emotional reaction to it that was constantly there and was not going to let up, and he wasn't going to resolve, and it's never going to be resolved, really. Like he like there's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of like of circumstances that can always kind of be linked to like to their death that he cannot do anything about, and so yeah, he'll never stop, and I buy it. That's the Punisher. Like that's why he does what he does. Like that's why Spider-Man fucking is heroic, because his uncle died and said, with great power comes great responsibility, and that drove him forever after that. That was like his ethos, and with Punisher, it's like his ethos is like vengeance, but he can never fully get vengeance, because in the end, like it's forces like that are just too big for him to undercut and undermine and ultimately take down completely. Like it's just it's bigger than him, and it's bigger than his mission, and so his mission never ends, and so he keeps getting driven by that, and they did a really good job of emphasizing that. I really like those kind of really simple shots towards the end where it's like it was his psychological perspective, and he was in this like dark room with like this bright light shining on him and his wife in bed, like and those were like either his memories or just this sort of mechanism that's it's kind of like this broken record narrative that's constantly playing in his mind, right? It's like the thing that's constantly there, but because he was in such a vulnerable state and hurt state, like I guess he just kind of fell into that like in a very extreme way, where he was very much in that world versus the real world, what was going on around him, where he was being tortured. That was really good stuff, and like they did a really good job of shooting the whole show. Everything worked for me. I like, as far as like the story, the way it developed. It got really exciting very quickly, probably around 5 or 6, and then it did not stop. It was like bam, 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 bam. It just kept going, and it was so intriguing. It was so intriguing. I really liked all this stuff with the relationship between the federal agent, the Iranian federal agent girl, and this like villain of the Punisher, like the good looking guy. Their interactions were very complex, and then that whole thing where like he kills her partner, and then he shows up in her apartment that night and like consoles her, and like we know it, and she doesn't know it in any way, and she's just like damaged by the experience because she feels that it was all her fault. That was cool. That was really good stuff. There was like a lot of really good drama in everything that was going on. I really like the stuff with the army vets, and like like kind of the like that group that they have, that support group, led by Frank's buddy who's missing a leg. I really liked all that stuff and how that kind of led to like one of the villains of the season. I don't exactly know who the villain is. I'm sure some of you know exactly who he might be. I'm sure he's somebody from the comics. But I really liked that, and I bought it as well. You know, like that's a tough one to pull off. You know, you've got somebody that has very clear like PTSD and like is incapable of dealing with it, and ultimately becomes radicalized within the United States. Like I bought it. Like the story was told in a way that was very authentic, and I know that like. And Frank Castle's a vet too, and I know that representing vets is important, and definitely there's a lot of vets out there. Henry, you know, shout out to you. There's a lot of vets out there, and like you guys, obviously you deserve a good depiction, you know, because obviously you put yourselves in positions to ultimately, like, regardless of what the political intentions are in Washington, like ultimately the majority of you guys are doing it because you love this country and you want to protect us, and I appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of people everybody appreciates it. Most people appreciate it, and so like if you're going to be represented in the media, it should be in a positive way, you know. And even though Frank was damaged and this dude was damaged, like there was a lot of time put into like explaining the damage, you know, and like really kind of representing it in a three-dimensional way, so like you don't come off as like monster, like people that are just, you know, permanently damaged and like first of all, the only people, you know, no, there was like a good amount of vets in there, and like obviously you had the Punisher's friend, the guy that was leading that group, and he was very of sound mind. Obviously he was there to support other vets, and like it's cool. Like I thought they did a really good job of all of it, and like again, I like that story arc with the dude that became radicalized and like the bombings and all this stuff. It was surprising, you know. I didn't expect it to go like that. So I like there was a lot of weaving of stories, but it was definitely a lot more interesting than what was going on in Iron Fist. I understand why people have criticisms of it. It was definitely not what you would expect the show to be. But this Punisher show was what you expect the Punisher show to be, which was very satisfying. So yeah, I really liked. Another thing I really liked was that it didn't feel like one of the Netflix shows. Like it didn't feel like one of the Defenders shows. It felt like something different, which is like a very risky move for them to make, because they've already established like this series of shows, this world that was very sort of like authentic and popular. People liked it, you know, but here we have the Punisher kind of walking his own path, and like ultimately his path is very different from these other people's paths. And so because it is just driven by hatred and like vengeance, and so like you got to kind of represent that in a different way, but again, that's risky because you're going again what's popular already, and so yeah, it was risky for them, and they pulled it off. I'm thinking if it was the showrunner for Iron Fist, they would not have pulled it off. The showrunner for Iron Fist is also responsible for the Inhumans show, which I have not seen, but I've heard is not good overall, even though I do hear that it might actually be decent as well. I don't know. I don't want to check it out. Because I'm really pissed off at everything Marvel's done since Disney bought them, trying to, again, make the Inhumans like the thing versus the X-Men. That really fucking pisses me off. Anyway, so the showrunner of the Inhumans apparently, well, he was the guy that also did Iron Fist. He apparently is not the greatest. I don't know. I didn't have a problem with Iron Fist, but yeah, it wasn't the greatest. I really like Jessica Jones. I really like Luke Cage. I really like Daredevil 1 and 2. I really like Defenders as well. Really enjoyed that. I have a series of reviews on that if somebody's interested in watching them. There's a playlist down there if you want to clickety-click-clack on it. Yeah, so like I've enjoyed everything that they've done, and I've looked forward to this, but I also knew that it had to go in a different direction, and it did, and I really like it. They've carved out their own sort of niche once again. It just keeps getting better and better. Unfortunately, we've heard about something going on with Disney. Like, oh yeah, they're starting their own streaming service, and I think they're going to want to produce these shows on it. So, unfortunately, I think at some point this might all end sooner than it should, or maybe it'll be continued elsewhere. I don't know. It's unclear right now, but hopefully they'll just continue doing some of this stuff, because what they're coming up with Jessica Jones season 2. I believe they just finished shooting Iron Fist, and I think they're going to shoot Luke Cage all season 2s, and then Daredevil season 3, and then ultimately they've got to do a Defender season 2, right? I don't know. I hope so. I don't know. I really love all this shit. It's so good. It's so much better than what the CW is doing. The CW is a disaster overall. Like, I think Legends of the Tomorrow was a big mistake. It's not a terrible show, and that's not why I'm saying it's a big mistake, but they really kind of like watered down a lot of like the coolest elements from some of the other shows. Like, it kind of took some of them, and then now is like Sarah. Sarah is one of my favorite parts of Arrow up until she died, and then when she came back, she was still one of my favorite parts. I loved her, but now I kind of feel like she's like a throwaway joke. I mean, she is like the leader of this group or whatever, but everything they're doing is so ridiculous that it's just like, this is Sarah? Fucking assassin? Like, I don't know. That's a whole other thing, though, me talking about the CW shows. I'll stop right now, because that's not what you signed up for. You wanted some Punisher, and I gave it to you. Yeah, I really enjoyed the series. Definitely worth watching, and if you feel that the first few episodes are slow, it's about build-up. Believe me, the pace picks up, and then it does not relent until the very end, and it's really great. Like, the whole thing is engaging. Once you're positioned within the world and like know the people, the position, the moving parts, it all gets really exciting. Yeah. Again, like one last thing I want to mention about Micro. I really like how in the first couple episodes there was like an arc of them getting together, because like, yeah, if Frank is going to let somebody in and be like a confidant for him, like, that's not going to be easy. That's not going to be an easy process, and it's going to be a difficult one. And it was for Micro. You know, he was like tortured by Frank. Frank went to his house, like investigated him by like talking to his family. The guy doesn't know what Frank's going to do, so he thinks that he put his family in danger. Like, it was a really good like way of introducing the character, and then introducing how important he is to Frank, and like kind of connecting them in a way that's like tangible and important, and ultimately visceral. Like, it has that sort of that ability to kind of get below your skin and really and ultimately make you really believe in it, you know. So did everything. I really like that guy, man. And he was another great element of the show, which was surprising. Didn't see it coming, and I was like, great. Please don't get rid of Micro. I need more of him and his family with Frank. I love the dynamic. It's really great. It's a nice sort of balance. Anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the show. Again, really enjoyed it. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. But if you have seen it, like, watch it again, because it's fucking good. All right, folks. Thanks for checking out my video. If you haven't already subscribed, there's a little button right down there. Yeah, right there. Okay, now you're gonna put your finger on it, or not your finger, unless it's your phone. But no, if it's your computer, put your mouse over. Just click. Okay, really softly. There you go. You're subscribed. You're there. I'm here. We'll be in touch. As always, I want to remind you, if you haven't already, you better put an X in that box, ladies and gentlemen, because ain't nobody checking me. Take care. Bye bye.